Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to get a preschooler to say I'm sorry. I'm Dr. Leslie Blevins with Enilda Clinic at enildaclinic.com. So let's get started. First, I want you to think about what values you personally have for your child whenever you're trying to get them to say I'm sorry. Some of the values that might come to mind could be kindness or maintaining relationships, having a growth mindset, seeing multiple points of view, admitting to mistakes, or having respect for others. There could be many other things too. And I think this is something that's unique to every family or every person. And so it's something for you to really think about and to identify, because that will be important whenever you're teaching your child to say I'm sorry. Now I want you to imagine a moment in the recent past when you might have been trying to teach your child to say I'm sorry. And I want you, and I'm thinking of preschoolers or toddlers right now. So I want you to reflect about that time and imagine what it looked like whenever your kid, or maybe another kid you know, was saying I'm sorry, maybe by force, and what you witnessed. What kind of emotions did they have on their face? What was their posture? I'm betting that you're thinking irritation or anger. Those are probably not emotions that start to evoke a learning process for values that are in line with the values that you intended with an apology. And that's important. What values do you think are actually being brought about in the traditional ways that we teach I'm sorry? Maybe that we have to prioritize others' feelings over our own, or we have to prioritize being submissive. I don't know. There could be all different kinds of things that we might learn whenever we're forced to say I'm sorry, but we don't really want to say that because we don't really feel that way. And so this learning video is about breaking down the value of apologizing and teaching it to a young child. Okay, so what do? Well, the first step is to reinforce approximations of the behavior, understanding that the value of apologizing is something that's learned over a lifetime. And so a preschooler or a toddler doesn't have that value inside them yet. Now, I'm sure that every kid out there is a great, amazing, good person, right? That's just how they're born. But you as a parent are helping them to hone their values as they're growing up and encountering different experiences, and as you are putting labels on there for them by talking about those experiences and giving them praise or different types of consequences for their behaviors. And so they're developing their values in that sense. And over time, whenever they approximate an apology, you can give them the consequences of that feeling better than not apologizing. And that will shape a full apology, but it will also shape the underlying values of why we apologize. And specifically, why apologizing might be important for your family or for your social settings that you frequent. So reinforcing approximations of the behavior is important here. Now, granted, for young children, apologizing looks very different than what it would look like for a full-grown adult. So oftentimes what I see with young children is that adults encourage the young child to go up and hug their peer. Maybe to say I'm sorry, or you're my friend, or variations of those kinds of things. But as an adult, we expect something totally different, and that's okay. But I encourage you to really think about, what is a good apology? I've seen with a little bit older kid range that a good apology might include making eye contact, or it might include the absence of certain facial expressions. And so really thinking, what counts as a good apology in our family, so that what is that end result behavior that you're going for. Because over time, as you are praising each tiny portion of the behaviors that create a good apology, your child is learning what it means, for instance, to be respectful of someone else. And so maybe as they grow up, they learn that to give a sincere apology that shows respect for another person means that they give eye contact. Or maybe it means that they have to give a hug to somebody whenever they give the apology, or they should give a reason for why they made the misstep or whatever. I think all of that's pretty flexible. And I think that's intentional because for each of you out there, you should be really collaborating as caregivers together to decide what's important for you and keeping up your cultural values so that you feel good about these types of things. The second step of teaching an apology is to give labeled praises. And so we want to be super explicit. So let's take the behavior approximations with the labeled praises. Let's say that a kid grabbed the red block from another kid and that second child started to go, ah. And so the first kid who grabbed the red block immediately knows, oops, I made a misstep and I need to apologize, right? But this kid just doesn't quite grasp apologies yet. And so what they do is they put the red block back and then they keep playing. Now, this might be the very first time that this kid has ever just put the red block back before the other kid blows up, but they did it because they realized the other kid was starting to get upset. That is one tiny part of an apology, right? They're making an amends. And so you can give that a great labeled praise because that's an approximation of an apology. And so you can say, Johnny, I love how you handed the red block back to Becky because it was, Becky was upset and she was trying to tell you that. And so I love how you were showing that you cared for Becky and that you want to play nicely together. So notice that I'm giving a lot of labeled praises for different value orientations, but I'm also not forcing Johnny to go above and beyond and do things that are outside of his capacity yet. What I am doing with labeled praises, though, is I'm helping Johnny to actually put attention on his own behavior. And then in the future, when some sort of play situation happens, he'll actually be more likely to notice when one of his playmates is starting to get upset. And if it was because he had done something to upset them, and he'll also notice what he might do to remedy the situation. So through these rehearsals and play over and over again, a child can learn how to negotiate those social situations and learn a social skill like apologizing. Another thing that you can do as a caregiver, a parent, or a teacher is to model. And so I'm not saying, do something big, but maybe do something little. Like maybe take a block that you know that the child is about to take or use, and maybe grab it. And then whenever the child actually goes, and starts to get that very, very first step of a tantrum, maybe say, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were about to use this red block, but here, I'll let you take it to use it because I care about you and I want us to play nicely together. And so in a way, you're actually modeling for that child an apology. And so doing this over and over in various different ways with various different skills will give, your child examples and reinforcement to do various forms of apologizing. The last thing that I would say is that you can also describe what your child is doing. So let's say that the child hands back the block. You can say, Johnny, you're handing the block back to Becky because you care about Becky's feelings right now and you want her to be happy playing with you. And so describing what Johnny's doing, again, helps him to pay attention to the behavior that he's doing, and you're labeling it in such a positive, value latent way that is foundational to him understanding what apologizing means. so that he'll be able to do it over time, really building on those skills to a full apology. So one of the things that you can do if you're working on training your child to give a good apology is to be preventive rather than reactive. What I often see is that caregivers might, in the moment, after the child has already made a misstep, decide that the child needs to learn how to give an apology. Usually in those situations, it's pretty hard because everybody's emotional. And so what I would encourage you to think about is, what are common situations when you would like your child to apologize? I've been using the example of sharing a toy with a peer. And so maybe there are other types of situations when, those are the situations you find that you want your kid to be able to apologize. You can think of that particular type of situation and just spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes tops and set up a play scenario where you're doing modeling, describing, you're giving labeled praises for approximations of behaviors that lead up to apologizing. Now, sometimes you'll have to be really quick. Sometimes it'll have to be just the teeniest, tiniest little behavior that's a portion of apologizing. Sometimes you're going to have to start with modeling so that, maybe you're doing it with your child you're trying to teach to apologize, but maybe you even have to start more basic than that. Maybe you have to start with modeling with a sibling or modeling with another adult, so that your child is just witnessing that this is how apologizing works. And then you can start to increase the difficulty level over a few different play sessions and helping your child to really understand and grasp that this is a social way of interacting that helps keep everything calm and maybe prevent timeouts or other types of, negative consequences in play. The last thing that I would say is that during your play sessions, to keep it really positive, because I think that apologizing isn't necessarily about shaming the person who's apologizing, but it's about keeping those relationships vibrant and close and alive, and the values, the ones I mentioned earlier, but then probably a lot of the ones that you're thinking of too, that really have nothing to do with the shaming piece. And so whenever you are teaching apologizing, I would love if you can phrase your praises in a non-shaming way so that your child wants to approach apologizing rather than trying to avoid apologizing. Okay, so that's the video for today. I hope that you enjoy it, and you can always get more learning videos at enildaclinic.com. I make one every week, and you can sign up to get them in your email there. Okay, have a great week. Bye.